Today, Biden allows Ukraine to strike Russia with long-range US missiles. China suffers its second mass attack in a week. Trump and his cabinet picks celebrate at a UFC fight in New York. And climate change talks get bogged down over money. It's Monday, November 18th. This is Reuters World News, bringing you everything you need to know from the front lines in 10 minutes, every weekday. I'm Carmel Crimmins in Dublin. President Joe Biden is allowing Ukraine to use US weapons to strike deep into Russian territory. US officials have told us the move has been approved in a significant reversal of Washington's policy. The announcement comes as Russia escalates its attacks. Over the weekend, it unleashed its largest airstrike on Ukraine in almost 3 months. The attacks targeted energy infrastructure, with power restrictions now in place across Ukraine. Biden's decision comes just 2 months before President-elect Donald Trump assumes office. It's unclear if Trump will reverse the policy, which focuses on long-range missiles known as the Army Tactical Missile Systems, or ATACMS. Mike Stone in Washington has the story.
The prohibition to date has been that the Ukrainian armed forces have not been able to use ATACMS in any cross-border strike, period. That has been the regulation. That is what is being removed here specifically. And what's going to occur is there are going to be limited strikes into Kursk, which is where the Ukrainian troops have been doing this incursion into Russia. Of course, the U.S. stance is that this is in response to Russia's escalation because Russia began to employ North Korean troops.
In a video message on Sunday, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky did not react directly to the reports. Instead, he said an announcement wasn't needed and that strikes are not made with words. The missiles will speak for themselves. So what does this mean for Ukraine? Mike Collett-White covers the conflict.
Well, for Ukraine, it is a significant development because the use allows them to strike within Russian territory up to 300 kilometers, which brings a lot of sort of supply lines and depots, arms depots, some air bases, some troop concentrations into range. But the caveat is that a lot of Russia's kit, including kind of their aircraft and arms depots, etc., are well beyond 300 kilometers. So it would help disrupt Russian military operations, but I'm not sure it's sort of the game changer that would shift the war convincingly in Ukraine's favor.
The Kremlin, Mike, says this decision will stoke tension and deepen the involvement of the United States in the conflict.
Well, Russia has been warning against this. Obviously, it doesn't want it to happen. It basically says that should this happen, then it's proof that there is direct NATO, US and European involvement in the conflict. And we have lawmakers, unsurprisingly today, sort of warning of the risks of World War III and significant escalation. So it is a risky move, but I'm not sure that the Russians would push too far ahead of Trump's arrival in the White House.
China is reeling from a second mass attack in a week. A former student went on a stabbing rampage at a vocational college in eastern China, killing 8 people and injuring 17. The 21-year-old was arrested at the scene and confessed, according to police. The incident comes just days after a man rammed his car into a crowd outside a sports stadium, killing 35 people. Lebanon's Hezbollah has confirmed its media relations chief, Mohammed Afif, was killed by an Israeli strike on a central Beirut building. It's a rare move from Israel, which doesn't tend to hit Hezbollah personnel who don't have clear military roles. Pope Francis has suggested the global community should study whether Israel's military campaign in Gaza constitutes genocide. It's some of the Pope's most explicit criticism yet of Israel's conduct in its year-long war against Hamas. Israel says accusations of genocide are baseless. President-elect Donald Trump is filling up more cabinet vacancies, choosing Brendan Carr, a vocal critic of big tech, to be chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. Meanwhile, oil and gas executive Chris Wright, a staunch defender of fossil fuel use, is Trump's pick to lead the Department of Energy. The president-elect receiving a roaring welcome on his return to Madison Square Garden, this time for a UFC event. Trump and his entourage spent hours ringside, watching 5 bouts. After winning the big fight of the night, Champ John Jones paid tribute to the president-in-waiting, busting out a YMCA dance similar to Trump's. Steve Holland has been covering the trip. Steve, we haven't seen much of Trump since the election. Why did he choose this venue for a public outing?
It's not something that presidents normally do. Most presidents either like NFL football, basketball, baseball. For Trump, it's this bare-knuckled brawler type event with people hitting each other in a cage fight format. And he counts the fans of this sport as a part of his political base of support. It's something that he feels strongly about maintaining links to. You know, many of the fans there were wearing red Make America Great Again hats. He got a lot of cheering, raucous cheers from the crowd. They were very glad to see him back in his kind of natural environment.
Who accompanied him to New York?
Trump had with him in his entourage an eclectic group that included RFK Jr., who's going to be his HHS secretary, Tulsi Gabbard, who's going to be the intelligence chief, Vivek Ramaswamy, who's not in the cabinet but is a part of this traveling group. And it just shows that Trump has not forgotten his friends. He sat right next to Elon Musk and Dana White, who's the president of the UFC. One thing I would add, Trump flew back to Mar-a-Lago in the middle of the night with Elon Musk, with RFK Jr., with his son, Donald Trump Jr., and with Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson. There's a photo posted on social media by one of Trump's aides showing them all eating McDonald's fast food in the middle of the night.
Negotiators at the UN Climate Summit in Azerbaijan are struggling to reach a climate financing deal. Countries agree that the most vulnerable nations need money to deal with global warming, but they disagree on who should be made pay and how much. It comes as a group of climate experts and former leaders, including former UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, say the annual talks are no longer fit for purpose. Simon Jessup is in Baku.
They need to get a new target. The numbers being bandied around do vary, but I think most parties would agree it needs to begin with a T, not a B. And if we don't start paying that soon, that number will rise because the damage will be greater and the need will be greater. But also how we get there, who contributes to that price tag? And historically, it's been the rich countries like the US, like Western Europe. They've had primary responsibility for doing that. But this time around, over the intervening period rather, you've had countries such as China and India get more wealthy. And the rich countries would argue that China and India, for example, should now formally pay in, and join them in this club of rich countries that pay for it. They don't want to set that precedent. And so that's a real sticking point. And the other thing is which pots of money this figure will come from. What rich countries have often done is give it in the form of a loan. Governments in the developing world don't want that. They would rather have a grant. So that's being debated.
Are there any new pockets of money that could be unlocked?
These are still questions at the moment, but we all know that some of the most polluting industries would be things like the oil and gas sector or the aviation sector. So the argument would be the polluter, in this case, certain sectors that get rich from polluting should pay, or that we as consumers should pay if we want to use those services or buy those products. So how that would work in practice is very much up in the air. With aviation, it could be. If you want to fly business class or first class, you would just pay a levy on top. $10, $20, whatever. It's a pool of money that if everyone agreed would raise, a serious amount of money, hundreds of billions a year. And you add all of these taxes together and you're starting to talk about a really big pot of money that previously wasn't there.
And before we go, today's recommended read is a message from Apple supplier Foxconn to recruiters in India. They've ordered the hiring agents who recruit iPhone assembly workers to remove age, gender, and marital status, as well as the manufacturer's name, from job ads. The move follows a Reuters investigation, which found that Foxconn was excluding married women from jobs at its main India plant. A link to that story, as well as our June investigation, is in the pod description. And for more on any of the stories from today, check out Reuters.com or the Reuters app. To never miss an episode, follow on your favourite podcast player. We'll be back tomorrow with our daily headline show.